Hello, everybody. My name is Harrison.
Hi, everyone. I'm Francisco.
And welcome to the very first episode of the Fucked Up Film Podcast. How do you feel, Franny?
I definitely feel like this movie should have not been the thing to kick it off.
Well, okay, all right.
Oh,
Well, yeah, let's talk about that then. Originally, we were supposed to cover the Japanese movie Grotesque, but unfortunately, we are English-speaking Americans, and we could not find a fucking version of that movie with English subtitles for free. So we ended up watching another movie. Tell us, Franny, what movie did we watch?
We ended up watching Salo, or known as The 120 Days of Sodom.
Yes, which is funny. Actually, you know what? I'm actually glad this is the first movie because, as you remember in the introduction episode, the reason why we're called the Fucked Up Film Podcast is because a long time ago, when I was in film school, I started a club called the Fucked Up Film Club, where we watched all manner of fucked up movies we can get our little grimy hands on. And it was, ironically, the first movie that started off this whole thing was Salo, or 121 Days of Sodom. And it began when me and my friend Jeannie, randomly, as we normally do, we just watch random movies some nights a long time ago. We put this in, and we were just completely blown away by what we were seeing. We were so shocked, we were confused, and for some reason, we said to ourselves, we need to share this with our friends. And not that it wasn't, or maybe it was the first screening at FUFK, I don't know, but it was definitely one of few that really had audiences like perplexed because, if you're listening to this, then you definitely know what happens in the movie, and we'll get into all that. But I think it was quite symbolic that this be our first movie, considering this is what got the ball rolling with the original club.
With that being said, the last time that Harrison or I watched it was actually for the very first meet.
Yeah.
And I honestly only remembered maybe 3 parts of it as far as the entire movie goes. So I think at that point we were watching it just more for the shock of it and like what's going to happen, what's going on. And now just finishing watching it not too long ago, it's like, wow, how did I forget so much of this film?
And I guess that maybe, the last time I did admittedly watch this was 9 years ago.
Yeah.
So while I do remember most of the stuff that happens, just reliving it now, 9 years older, is a wholly different experience.
It's more watching it in depth and then like not just taking it for the face value and the shock of it. It's more of like observing the film and seeing what's going on, what's being said, what's being done, the reasoning. And it definitely is fucked up.
Yeah. I gotta admit, viewing it this time was not as fun as watching it the first time.
Granted, the first time we did watch it with an entire group of people. I think there was at least 10.
Yeah, it was about 10. And they were all film students.
Yeah, so it was mostly, some of the times I do remember people were looking away, making conversation on the side. They were watching it but not paying attention, and so that kind of distracted at least me on that end.
And I guess, we did try to have a lot of fun while watching the movies. And
a lot of jokes, yeah.
And I remember specifically this time because at that point, me and Jeannie had watched the movie, so I had planned specifically to provide chocolate cake for the screening, which I think was very, very effective because we pulled it out at the exact moment. And for viewers of this movie, you know exactly what moment that is.
But Harrison did not learn because he has a little box of chocolate right next to
Yeah, and ironically, 9 years later, I have some fudge that a friend brought from me, I had a friend who bought this fudge for me from Prescott, and I was sitting here like thinking, why is this next to me? I can't eat this for like a week now because... and I don't know what it is, but let me share with you a story real quick. On the other podcasts I'm a part of, The Final Gaze, I had put some really messed up movies on that list to watch, and my co-host just refused to watch it because it disturbed him so much, even based off the descriptions. And I'm all like, well, okay, I guess that makes sense, but me, I can stomach that kind of stuff, Yeah. And then here I am watching Salo, and I cannot believe it. But I was physically getting like, I was just like, I don't know if I can do this, Franny. I might pause. I didn't pause it, but it was the shit scene because in the movie there is
Yeah.
the practice, open practice of fecalphilia, where they just consume shit like it's Sunday brunch, but
That was I completely did not remember that part. That was I'm not even sure how I forgot something so graphic. I guess we'll go with that.
yeah. But for a majority of the time, like I guess 9 years is what it takes for me to just feel something, because this movie had me in a genuine like shocked feeling throughout the majority of the movie.
It felt more like more empathy, more seeing what the characters were going through rather than just seeing it for what's going on, but feeling for the characters, because I definitely don't remember watching it and really embracing like what they were being put through.
Yeah, because you're right. Yeah, being a part of a group, I mean, we were pretty rowdy back then anyway, because we would have been like, what, 22, 23 or something?
Yeah, early 20s.
So,
Most of us.
and, I feel we've lived through these 9 years, so this time it was different. And this time it wasn't so, rape. Now it's more like, oh, I feel for them.
It was I don't know. Watching it was definitely different this time around, and I'm still in awe that I only remembered probably 3 scenes, and most of them, or the 3 scenes, were violent, which probably is why those stuck out more. The rest of them was just down. I mean, it was just plain degrading, and I think maybe that's why that didn't stick in my head, because that is just not something you want to remember, I guess.
Yeah, unfortunately, the way I felt about this movie, I don't want to feel again. But this is movie number 1 out of 22, so we have a long road ahead of us.
All right, so this is my first time doing any kind of podcast, so I decided to just take some notes and some highlights and go from there. So this was filmed back in 1977.
It was released in 77, but shot in 75.
75. Okay, so the time period that the director set this in was in between 1944 and 1945.
Yeah.
During that time is when the Nazis were around, so it kind of related to the original, which we just found out today it's an actual book that was based on true events from 17.
Yeah, but the mid 1700s. Yeah.
It was published in 1904, and it contains true events from 1785.
Which essentially, the book itself is accounts of 4 libertines, which we recently discovered meant
a person without morals, especially in sexual endeavors.
Yeah, so 4 of those guys kidnapping teenagers and subjecting them to
violence,
sadomasochism, rape, torture,
just a way to degrade and defile a human being. Another part of that libertarian, I can't pronounce it. Libertine is they're people in high power. Yeah. So throughout the whole movie, you see that these people are just they have no preference. Everything and anything for sexual gratification is part of their being. I completely forgot a lot of that.
Which I think takes the idea of sexual freedom to a wholly different level.
At that point, it's funny that you say sexual freedom, because this movie is exactly projecting the opposite of that. It's showing that people aren't really free, which is, again, something that you can take away from it once you're dissecting the movie, and then after seeing a little bit of the director's commentary, it is very obvious that there was no... They basically got captured, and out of the bunch that was captured, there was 16 boys, 16 girls.
No, 9 boys,
but
9 girls.
Out of the group that there was originally captured.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, they captured, we'll just say about 20-ish of each sex, and then 9 were chosen from each one. So, and the movie begins basically by what looks like Nazi guards in a black car going down, the countryside. And these boys are riding their bikes, and they go and they capture, I think, all 3 of them. I'm trying to remember. Either way, they get them. They take them over to a place to where they get either chosen or not chosen to be moved to this new home.
Palazzo.
Yeah. And while they're basically given a set of rules. And the set of rules basically is no one's going to find you So you're basically dead to the world. And the rules are just basically do as you're told, obey. If you don't, there's consequences. And we'll find out that actually did come to fruition later in the film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, the rules basically said you can't have sex with each other. If you do, there'll be a loss of limb, yeah. Which we didn't see, but it's implied. Yeah. The other one is if you make any sort of reference to God, then you just die immediately. Yeah. Yep.
That was definitely an interesting one. I'm not sure why though. That's such a harsh.
Maybe I feel maybe it was more of a power play on their end because they want to be seen as gods in the eyes of these poor teenagers.
Yeah, that does make sense. I mean, that was definitely. I mean, they did as they wanted, mm-hmm. which is the very first. I guess the first part of the chapter or the trilogy, as they refer to, is the Circle of Obsession, which is they're all sitting in a room, and they're accompanied by storytellers. So 4 women that either play the piano, tell stories, or have some kind of affiliation with the 4 libertarians. And in there, basically, she tells stories of her past promiscuity or her jobs as a prostitute.
Which is made all the more worse at the fact that she is 7
when she started at these stories. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry, at the part of the movie. Sorry, yeah. And the libertarians tell them to spare no details for within theirs where they find the imagination. Libertines. What did I say?
Libertarians. Whoops. I think those are actual people who support freedom.
I can't. Yeah, like this is such a. I did not hear about this word, and then when we looked it up today, it's like that's a
doozy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the libertines, they want no details spared solely because from there they drive their imagination and they're forced to act and subject these poor people to torture and torment and rape. And it's implied that any time where they want to stop in between the stories and take advantage of these people, they will. And it's shown, I believe the very first sign of that is when one of them has one of the guys start groping him. And from there it just kind of turns into a whole, they do as they want when they please, and no one stops them.
Mm-hmm. And I think, I don't know, this whole situation is like a nightmare version of the sexual revolution happening at that time, because we're approaching the end of the era of the hippie, which of course celebrated sex openly, mm-hmm. And here we see just like the bastardization of that.
Yeah, it's there's the fine line of willing and unwilling, and so they take the openness of what's supposed to be joyous and pure and gratifying and turn it into something really dark, mm-hmm. because it's forced, and within there they get the gratification, they get the driving force to keep doing it. Is what turns them on is the suffering of others in one way or another. And like you said, this was this event is what basically puts sadism,
yeah.
Sorry, into
Yeah, no. Yeah, that was really, like, I didn't, because I think you asked me when the movie was released, so I just Google searched, the 120 Days of Sodom, and I didn't even get the movie result. That's when we found out that this movie was based off a transcript, based off events that happened in the 1700s. So this event happened at some way or another, but that's when we realized, just kind of reading into the book a little, that this was the book that actually introduced the word sadism into the century. So thanks a lot, France, was it Italy, or
some part of the European.
Yeah, because the author is Marquis de Sade, and I'm not sure if that sounds French, so I'm gonna blame the French on this one.
So this is one of those movies that if you don't dig into it, you won't realize what it actually is.
Yeah.
So knowing that this was based on true events makes it just that much worse, but at the same time, we're seeing a modern day at that time representation of those events, which make them worse in a sense that it could have happened as recently as, well, at that time, 30 years prior to the film being made, but that this was going on through history. which we're going to touch up on that later.
Because the original book has, rich French royalty subjecting French children to this, the horror.
Yeah.
This movie has it set at the end of World War II involving
the Nazis.
Nazis, And the film, when it was made in the real world in the mid 70s and to the 77, at the time, even the director stated himself that this was a statement on fascism, and how even people at the time feared their rise again at that time, So it all, this is the kind of stuff that this podcast wishes to, examine, is that sometimes the most fucked up shit, there is a reason behind it. And in this case, the director wanted to make a statement on fascism, and he did it in a very extreme way.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at it, this transcripts were from the late 1700s. It just goes to show that we didn't know about them 300 plus years, which means that if you forget history, you're bound to repeat it. And it seems like that was a reminder back in the 70s. And then with everything going on now, it kind of looks like they just, every few decades, something happens that happened not too far in the past. But we keep forgetting because, life goes on. And if it doesn't affect you, most people won't pay attention to it.
Yeah. And even I think it was last year or this year, there was a movie that came out that was like super controversial, and people were like, ban it, and then it get banned for a little while, but then it actually had a release, and it was called The Hunt. You ever heard about that?
I have not, actually.
No, it's actually, it was an interesting movie because I can see the themes, like maybe like a possible present day representation of that whole, rich people doing stuff to poor people or middle class people. But it was a story about basically these incredibly rich and powerful Republicans kidnapping, I think it was just like Democrats, and putting them in like a Hunger Games situation where they hunt them.
Okay, now starting to come back a little bit. I did not see much promotion on that, actually.
Well, I remember it was like, oh, that looks really good, but then it got like banned because everyone was like, this movie is offensive to Republicans, and the Republicans were all like, let's ban it, and they got banned. But then, like, I don't know, the world settled down or something, and like it had a limited release, and then unfortunately it was fuel to the fire because, as you say, bad press is, any kind of press is good press, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the movie embraced it, and it's like, the movie that was banned, you can watch it now.
By doing that, you're saying it's something you shouldn't watch, and by human nature, whatever you're told not to do, you will want to do it more after you're told not to.
Yeah.
It just seems kind of like when you say, like, the rich pitting the poor against each other, it's basically like The Purge, just in a more artistic way. The Purge is probably the most mainstream way to understand the issue at hand that has been.
Except I think those movies,
it's extreme.
It's more of an
extreme.
I don't want to. Well, I guess that would be the proper way to say, is that it's definitely dumbed down to, like, the first movie was just a straight up home invasion, and it wasn't until the sequels where it got into the more political aspect of it.
That's I mean, if you look at it, this is at that point during the Purge, like whenever they occur, it's more like it's become normalized, so people embrace it and go on and so forth. These movies that we're watching that have the similar message is more modern day, before it really is a huge problem to the point to where you need Purge insurance.
Purge movies to
Ethan Hawke was selling it that during that movie.
And hell, even the director in the little thing, the little special feature we watched was like, this is a timeless story. It could be applied to any kind of generation. Like he said, he pulled this story from a 17th century transcript. So it was like, whoa.
It just goes to show that problems will come and go in any different shape or form. The solution could be one that we always overlook because we're kind of shown to overlook it.
Yeah.
You get rid of one problem by causing another, and nothing ever gets solved. So,
which begs the question: Can this movie be made today?
I could see it being made, but not being released or understood, because everyone nowadays has the attention span of a goldfish. So you see it, and the first thing you see is violence, degradation, at this point slavery, because they were taken and they were held hostage, rape, just straight up torture. And like the director was saying, is it's a message. If you look at it and you actually watch it and understand what's going on, you'll see the message. But if you're just watching to watch it,
face value.
Yeah, face value. It goes, You hear it, and that's it. You'll just make a rash decision, and that's what it is. Just like we did 9 years ago.
Yeah, it's a perfect example because all I do remember is the fucked up stuff.
Yeah, well, the violent stuff that really wasn't even that bad. Because the one that I remembered was when in one of the scenes they're made to act like dogs, and one of the libertines ends up getting, I think it's like bread pudding or something, and stuffs it with nails and feeds it to one of the captured. And she starts eating it, and she bites down, and she starts spewing out blood. That's basically one of the only scenes that really sticks out, because it's one of the very few violent acts in this movie. Everything else shows every other side of degradation of a human being, which is something that he made a point of as far as what sadism is taken into account in that part of the movie.
Yeah. And the one thing that I really didn't catch on to the first time I watched it so long ago, but probably made much more sense now, having acquired so much knowledge through these years of living the past decade and watching the special features, was that the director said he purposely planned the film to be Dante-esque. And it was pretty obvious now because there's subtitles that literally say the circle of insert fucked up word here.
Let's see. The circles were a circle of obsession, circle of shit, and circle of blood.
Yeah,
which is the trilogy, I guess.
I guess you could say that, yeah. And me personally realized at this time that was like, wow, okay, I am feeling this here, because not only did I'm not saying that First Lady's stories weren't that bad, but considering what the stories that came after with those two other ladies, it just kept getting progressively worse and just more disturbing, because she explained herself as a prostitute as a 7-year-old. That's already pretty fucked up.
Yeah.
And then the second person had to do more with, fecalphilia, eating shit, shitting on people, and the third storyteller had to do more with torture and mutilation. And I'm just like, fuck, I cannot take this. I felt like one of those kids in there, because we were being forced to listen to these horrific stories, and I could just, and it's made even worse because you have a juxtaposition of these really fucked up stories matched with very pleasant piano music.
See,
and I don't know. Yeah,
I think when they started doing the piano stuff is to kind of normalize the setting of the room and the stories, which is kind of fucked. One of the things that they compare them to was the Sodomites and the executioners. Now, one of the quotes from the movie along the lines is, "We will kill you to the limits of eternity if eternity had limits," which was later played on the film that, you could kill someone once, but you can torture them to the very, until the edge of death, and then it can continue from there. It just goes to show you that a human life, in the eyes of the director for this film, which he ended up expressing later on, it's a commodity. At this point, you're a product. So
the film did a really fantastic job of making these children feel like things, not people.
Yeah, it was normalizing, you're not a person. We're taking that away from you. You have a value now. Yeah. And they were traded not traded, but they were chosen by the 4 libertines. So,
and I think a scene, and it's crazy because, the breaking down of someone, torture them all you want, but the worst sort of torture is that of the mind. And the one scene that really did that for me was the scene where they're trying to figure out who has the best ass, which I've been to a contest where you got the best ass, so this took it a whole different way. But the scene where, they decide whoever has the best ass will be just killed immediately. And they choose that individual, and they aim the gun at him. And I'm thinking, right before we realize what happened, is like the gun's not loaded. And lo and behold, the gun isn't loaded. And I think that's where that line was said, right?
Yeah, no, that was said beforehand. Oh. But I think it was shown to be like, there is no easy way out. Death is the easy way.
Mm-hmm. And it was just for some reason, I think just having gotten older, that's the most fucked up thing that anyone could do anything to be, because I think to them the idea of freedom is now death, and they're even denied that, and it just made my heart sink.
It was like he was saying at the very beginning, no one knows you're here. To the world, you're dead. there is no way out, basically. And I mean, it broke them down. If you at the very beginning of every circle, you see them all in the same room. At the very first circle, they're all dressed in the clothing that they came in. In the second circle, they're wearing less.
Yeah.
And I think by the third circle, they're completely naked and just they look
broken.
They look broken. They
Dead
look
on the inside.
Yeah, no, you can see a lot of them. They sit there with their eyes completely blank. And I think at that point, it's made apparent that they're broken because at that point is almost 120 days. So. 4 months. 4 months.
4 months, yeah.
4 months of ongoing psychological, physical torture. It broke them.
Yeah.
And I think that's a comparison you can see once you start seeing how they're all displayed at the very beginning of every circle.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that I want to talk about is that one individual character. I think his name was Umberto, where he looks like he was embracing it.
Yes.
Yeah, because it seems that he really developed a connection with that one libertine.
Yeah, he was instigating the touching and the affection and the.
He was kissing back. He was touching back. He was willingly eating the shit. He was just
He was just
submissive, as we say.
Yeah, and I think that might have been a very telling part right there that was underlining in that character's motive for the movie.
Mm-hmm. Which I think for him, I mean, everyone is a tragic character. Not the libertines, but almost every one of these children is a tragic character. But his sticks out the most because he still ends up being killed and tortured at the end.
Yeah.
So
I'm trying to remember what rule he broke to have gotten the ribbon.
That is, I don't quite remember what rule he broke, but I want to say, wasn't he the one who got caught with, like, he's the one who initiated the string of tattletales?
I forget in that room. So at the very beginning of the Circle of Blood, this, I don't know, what do we call him, hostage? This teenager. Mm-hmm. He ends up having relations with this libertine, and he just basically told him, that him and his friend were ready to go whenever. And the libertine walked into the room where the boys were kept, and one of the boys asked him what was going to happen the day after and what they were going to do to him. And the libertine basically said, that's up to them, and that'll be decided tomorrow. And in a attempt to have him be spared or lessen the punishment, he ended up telling on another of the teenagers, and that kind of had a domino effect because he told that one of the teenagers had a photo underneath their bed, underneath their pillow. Mm-hmm. So when he went to go confront that teenager, she said if she'd spare him if he would spare her the photo, she would lead him to people that were breaking other rules, which was fraternization between them, which was 2 other girls. And when the libertarian went to confront them, one of the girls, he pointed the gun at her head and said, "If you shoot me, I won't be able to tell you that one of the guards is having relations with one of the black maids." And again, this was set during the Nazi era. Mm-hmm. So that must have been a big trigger because he went in where they were at and confronted him. Not just him, he ended up getting the other libertines from their rooms. They went and confronted him. He pushed her off, and he did. I want to say it was a Nazi salute. It wasn't really a Nazi salute.
I want to say it was an anti-Nazi salute because when Nazis salute, their hand is extended outward.
Yeah.
For this one, his fist was closed, so maybe it was like big old "fuck you."
Well,
to the man.
He held it in that way, but not like a Black Power sign or position. So that might have been what put him in the shock, and they ended up shooting him, and then unfortunately shooting the maid.
Because I admit, watching it now, I feel it was very satisfying to just see those men caught off guard, the libertines, because it was an empowering moment. It was, and it's funny because I want to get into this with another character, but it was one of 2 human moments in the movie.
Well, I think that's because, like you said, they want to be seen as gods or have that attribute. At that point, it felt like they were very humanized.
And here's this man standing in defiance of these so-called god kings, and that's like, whoa. You know, I mean, he didn't make him bleed, but he certainly made him feel like, oh shit.
Yeah, I mean, they all shot him several times.
Did they kill the black maid?
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
Yeah, they walked. One of them walked over to her and shot her in the head.
Oh boy.
So, and then from there, they're all. That leads to the last 120, or to the end of the 120 days, which anyone whose name was written in their book, which had broken one of the laws that wasn't severe enough for death at the time, but was severe enough to be put in the book. Yeah. They were given blue bows.
It looks like all of them were given.
Yeah, but they were. I'm trying to remember. Did the blue bows signify that they?
Yeah, that they broke a law.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So the ones with the blue bows, it ends basically with every libertarian watching. Libertine. Goddamn. Sorry. I'm so sorry. I
think libertarian is a political party nowadays.
That's my mistake. I'm definitely not political at all. So the libertines each get to watch, I think, members from their own pickings get executed or get tortured and killed. Hanging, flogging, burning.
What's that thing?
Oh, they were branded. Yeah. One of their tongues gets cut off, and
a scalping.
Oh yeah, a scalping. Yeah. That was a.
And one of the very oddly specific ones holding a candle
to their genitals.
One's genitals. Yep.
Yeah. Eye removal. That was another one.
Eye gouging.
Right. And that was the one that was submissive. Not sure why he got that one, but
it's pretty. Again, there's no favoritism here.
Yeah, it just the whole movie. These four, it's kind of not okay to call them people. These sadists basically had no filter at all. They would participate in sexual activities with the guards, with the teens, with each other, which.
The storytellers.
With the storytellers, with basically everyone. They had, it basically was almost everything turned them on that was caused by suffering. So at the moment that they heard someone suffering, in one of the instances, one of the girls cries because her mother died, he ends up getting going for that. And
getting off on that grief.
Yeah. And it really puts in perspective the dark side of the whole sexual free will. It's, it just made it seem so much worse than it was. It's hard to describe without watching the movie. But it's definitely difficult to watch, being more empathetic now.
Yeah, and one of the most, what I think is the most disturbing scene, just because I think it's really sickening, and it's done very cleverly in a way that makes you feel and think that some fucked up shit's going on. Not only visually, and I'm referring to the scene where one of the libertines literally takes a dump on the floor and forces a girl to eat it. That's that same girl who's crying.
Same scene.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of things happening in that scene. Visually, it's pretty fucked up, but I feel the director did something pretty clever with the sound mix, where he added the sound of airplanes. I want to say like fighter planes flying over just a field, and it's just that sound of an engine flying over.
It sounds very ominous and boom, like the bass is heavy. Like it makes you feel something versus just hearing it.
Because I bet people at the time maybe have heard that they would have felt like an imminent attack. There was an attack that was going to be imminent. Yeah. So it was just. I feel that was pretty impressive because, at that time, I felt very like, oh, shit, I do not feel comfortable at all.
It's using the sound to induce a feeling of uncertainty and uncomfort.
Which I have only seen that done, very specifically in a movie called Irreversible, which was part of the Fucked Up Film Club, where they purposely used invisible tones that induced nausea in audience members. They literally used an unheard tone in the soundtrack to make people feel dizzy and nauseated. So
that's very that's good.
Yeah, I love that movie. If it weren't so, I don't know, but I don't think it's on the list. But it's definitely, you should definitely watch.
It's
it
a French film, right?
It's a French film with Monica Bellucci. She gets raped for 9 minutes, unfortunately.
I was not there for that one when we watched when that was shown a few years back. Yeah. I do remember hearing about it the next day. Yeah. I was like, oof.
And it's a great movie. It's its fucked upness is done on purpose. You know, there's a point and reason to it, and it's done in a very artistic way. But you'll just have to see. If we're talking about this having a Dante quality, that is definitely the personification of a Dante circle.
The only reason that movie really stuck out to me, as far as even the name, even though I haven't seen it, is that shot was shot for, like, that scene was done uncut and for 9 minutes. Was it?
Yeah, the whole movie is shot in like. I don't know how many, but there are extremely long uncut takes. And that's what that movie was known for. So even on a technical level, it's impressive.
Yeah.
But this isn't about Irreversible. I'm pretty sure maybe if we can't find a movie we can't on this list like we did today, we'll put that on the list. But
that wraps up the movie. The whole movie is just constant reminder that let me see how he saw. Okay, so the director basically saw sadism as what power does to the body when it's manipulated by hatred. I think that's what it was. Yeah,
no, I love that. I especially got it more this time on. This is basically just an extreme version, an extremely fucked up sadomasochistic version of how power can corrupt people.
And he put it on not just a sexual level, but on an entire political level, and then the world around us, and that there are those kinds of people among us that really take it to the extreme at the cost of other people. He also said that man has a social need to conform, and he's born to obey into the society where he's, whatever he's born in. So religion, social status. He says that he never thought that man could truly be free in any society at that current time. That man is not truly free because of you're born into a religion, you're born into a social class, and it's very true. It's no one is free because you're born and you're put into a box of the influence around you. So that's definitely something that I took away from that. Another fun thing that we learned during the little commentary is only 4 or 5 actors were actually used in the movie in the sense that he called them actors. The rest were people's first movies.
Which I feel were more of the adult people who were legitimate actors. And I love when filmmakers do this, and I love it when they do it right, because there are some people who are just natural at how they act in the world that it comes across as natural acting in a film. And what I mean is that the director literally found people on the street, just walk in and be like, you look like you could be in a movie, and then he puts them in the movie.
Yep. The actors that weren't traditional actors did not know what the film was about and did not know what was going to be happening in the scene that they were filming until 3 or 5 minutes beforehand. And one of the actresses that spoke about it said that it was to keep a very natural vibe, and they were just as shocked as to what was going to be filmed. So most of the reactions, I think, were very natural. Like, what would you do if you were in this situation? You're not an actor by occupation, so you're just a person on the street, and boom, you're in this situation. And I think they acted and reacted like a person that kind of would.
And I feel like I think the best representation of that sort of approach is the wedding scene, where the man stops the wedding to just literally make out and grope everyone in that wedding. I feel they didn't even warn him. They just rolled the camera and then they just let the guy do his thing, because you mentioned even there was a guy trying to not laugh, and
which in the commentary was actually an actor that they said that anytime that they had to stop filming was because of that actor.
Which I find that funny too, that despite how immeasurably fucked up this movie is, the people were having a good time making it.
Which was said by one of the storytellers, and it looks like it was as recent as what, like maybe 15 years ago?
2000, because this movie came to America in like the 2000s on Criterion.
So they did an interview with one of the storytellers, after 30 years had passed or so, and she did say that the mood of the setting was always pleasant. It was a lot of jokes. It was very humorous, and
despite the content,
and they said once they saw the film put together, they did not realize that they put together such a quote unquote like horrible movie. when that was not what was in the, behind the scenes.
Yeah,
That's
it's
not
like,
how it was
whoa,
at all.
what the hell?
So a thing that I learned was the director was actually murdered because of this movie.
Yeah, stabbed to death, I think,
then run over-
by a young man.
And then run over with his car.
Yeah.
'Cause I was reading that on the thing.
Yeah, that's just how intense this movie was. The making of it was controversial.
Police on set.
Yeah, one thing I didn't know is that, they had police on set to guard people. Some film was stolen. There was a lot of protests against the movie.
It was banned in Italy until they said as early as 2000.
Yeah.
And then they were able to screen the uncut version.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show that at the time after he was murdered, fellow directors, they said about 10 or 20, tried to speak on behalf of the film, and they were silenced by the press, which, if you really think about it, that's exactly what the movie was about.
Yeah.
The movie's about being subjected to not having freedom, and that's exactly
being
what happened.
suppressed from your own personal freedoms.
Exactly. And by the way I ended up taking his death is he died by his own artwork. He tried to have a voice, and that voice got a little too close to someone that didn't like it, and it ruffled way too many feathers.
Yeah, what a way to go.
But
it created press for it, though, but
yeah.
it still got banned.
I mean, he definitely shot a movie that will be remembered for decades to come.
Yeah, and I'm glad that it has the recognition it has now, because the movie was released worldwide through Criterion, which sole purpose is to preserve and not distribute, but I guess preserve is the right word, but I don't want to say remaster, but they definitely take the negatives from these films, original negatives that they can, and scan them in at the highest quality. They clean up any kind of dirt, debris, film scratches. They remaster the audio tracks from the negatives, So they completely present this movie in the best possible way to preserve it. And it's fantastic, because that means that the movie can be seen almost in two different ways. And I think we've experienced the most extreme versions of those two different ways. One would be just to see it at face value and say, holy shit, that's some fucked up stuff happening. And then the second way is how we're viewing it now. We're seeing the message behind the madness, behind, people can see just the violence and the gore and the sexual nature of the film, but behind it, there's the message that we see now. So we're pretty fortunate to be able to do this with this movie, because, like you said, for a while it was banned worldwide, it seemed. And it's only in the 2000s, 20 years ago, that it just barely came out,
Yeah. It's, I mean, again, it's probably a good way to see this movie, for me anyways, because, like, again, saw it 10 years ago. I mean, I remember movies that I saw, 15, 20 years ago as if I saw them yesterday. But then this movie that stuck out a lot to me, especially because it's in the realm of interest that piques my interest. I don't remember much, and things that I remember are just the slight violent scenes. So the rest of it, I guess, was just either bad enough to block out. I was not watching it. I was talking to someone else.
On your phone.
I was on the phone. And then watching it now, I was just like really paying attention to it. The dialogue, what's being said between the libertines, which is actually a pretty vital thing. The way to discuss these people as objects. That would have definitely been lost to me 9 years ago. Now it's definitely more impactful, and the message gets a better understanding now than it did then. So it's very nice to be able to see it with, I guess, more mature eyes and more of an open mind as to what the message is. Because then that's literally why we watch those movies, because it's fucked up. Because in that sense, we're like, this isn't what you would see on, mainstream media. You're like, oh, you're going to see more violence, more gore, more, just a lot more of the extremes that we wouldn't watch. And watching it then, we saw it just for that, which we did not think about the message. Looking at it now, it's like, let's see what's behind all of that. And I'm just happy that we were able to do that.
Yeah, which is why I'm really glad that this is our first movie. Because while grotesque would certainly challenge your sensibilities as far as torture and gore goes, this one did it in a way where we could see the message. Admittedly, I don't even think grotesque had a message. It was like, hey, look how fucked up I could be. But we'll get to that movie sooner or later. But I'm really glad this was the first movie we covered.
And some of the directorial outtakes or whatever, it was referred to as a masterpiece. It's definitely a very well shot movie.
There's nothing crummy about it.
No, it's the setting. Again, it's one of those things that you have to look at for such horrible things to be happening. The settings are beautiful. The mansion, castle, wherever,
Palazzo.
It's beautiful. The interior, exterior, everything is very well put together, kind of to balance out, what's going on within those walls. Because if you see a dim, dingy dungeon, you immediately go to the negative. But when you see something counter that negativity with positivity or the beauty in it, it's very easy to understand either side of the spectrum.
Yeah, there's a lot of fucked up shit happening in some very beautiful locations.
Basically.
Yeah. One thing I want to discuss real quick are the final moments of the movie.
It was interesting because each libertine watched their...
Oh, no, literally the final
okay, the final one. The final one was the two guards that were, in the room with the libertine while they were watching. They set down their guns, and one of them asked the other, "Do you dance?" And he said no, but the first guard ended up turning the music to something of a joyful tune.
Like a waltz.
Yeah. And then the first guard asked the second one, let's give it a try. So they start waltzing. And the second guard asks, "What's your girlfriend's name?" And the first guard responds with Margarita. Mm-hmm. And that's it. And
what did you take away from that?
My takeaway from that is it's very similar to a Serbian film in a way. But to me, this really said these people watched others die and suffer and just go through the worst without blinking an eye, and they can have a casual conversation as if nothing happened. And that's borderline, what's the word? Can't even, not psychopath, sociopath behavior. Also, it just shows that people that have these thoughts could walk amongst you and you would not even know.
Yeah.
It's
well, that's an interesting take.
That's what I got from it, is that it's very that they were unfazed by it. They were very desensitized, and they could live and carry on normal lives like nothing.
Yeah. I think my takeaway from that was because while the people who've been, these libertines wrote these people's names in books who would be punished for their, breaking of the laws and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So when those people are being tortured, there's this really grim, choir music going on, almost Gregorian music, And then it's funny, to me at least, because it switches inside to those two guards, and one's listening to the radio, and that's when he switches it, and the music changes to, the waltz music. And I took that more as a ignorance is bliss, where all this horrible shit is happening outside, but he literally changes the channel to something a bit more upbeat and happy. And I took that as a statement of, bad shit's happening, but it's not happening to me, therefore I'll ignore it.
That's, and that definitely is a good message on that, just because that's kind of how a lot of people think. If it doesn't involve them or doesn't involve those around them, they don't care.
Yeah. As our favorite Joker said, if I announce tomorrow I'm going to blow up a truck of soldiers, everyone loses their minds. If I say tomorrow one little mayor's gonna die,
That's your favorite Joker. Mine's actually Mark Hamill.
Oh, and I think I fucked up that line, but
Yeah, no, and it makes sense. It's right there, just with that quote. You gave those people value, monetary, whatever kind of way you want to give them value, aside from human. Like one mayor, one life versus a truck full of soldiers, many lives, but yet one person outvalues the many. Is it because of social status? Is it because of his occupation? What gives the right for anyone to give someone a value like that? And that right there just shows you what's wrong with society.
which, as he said, it's all part of the plan.
But then whose plan? but whose plan? That's the big question that we'll probably keep pondering and wondering until the end. So.
And speaking about the end, I wanted to save this for the very end. I mentioned it earlier, but I believe there are just 2 acts of 100% humanity with 2 characters. One was the guy who was sleeping with the black maid. I feel that in that sense, that was probably the most normal thing to happen in that house, was actual love between 2 people, and then he was killed for it. That was very beautiful, romantic, and tragic. And the other one, and I noticed it this time, the piano player they have, it appeared at some moment that she even tried to save these kids in a certain way, where she enacted, because they were at the wedding, but they were all somber, and she did some sort of act with one of the storytellers, and they kind of laughed, and I thought they kind of saved all of them in a sense. And of course, at the end, she's still playing all this upbeat music while these torturous things are happening, and she just stops and walks up to the highest room in the tallest tower, and then she looks at these tortures happening, and then she's like, you can tell throughout the movie, there's just she's being affected by what's happening so much that at the end she throws herself out the window and kills herself.
Yeah, she definitely was not like the rest of the storytellers or the other 3 women in the room. She definitely seemed more. It was little subtleties that gave away that she showed some compassion.
Yeah. And I just found it incredibly ironic and tragic that the most human moment in this movie resulted in death. Which at that point, I think that is what all those prisoners, all those child prisoners craved, was an end. And that end to them, their happiness meant dying.
Yeah, freedom isn't free, and
free. Okay, America. Freedom isn't
by
free.
That, it's okay. By that, how do I? Let me reword that. Death to them was freedom, but that was just not going to come easy. Mm-mm. And I don't even, aside from the woman being hung and probably the girl being scalped, the way they were tortured at the end, the ones that were in the book. That's not really I can't really see them dying from some of those injuries.
It's a long death.
I mean, if it's coming, it's
come slowly.
Exactly.
You're not gonna die from a flame under a penis. I'll tell you that.
Because there was only one person that was definitively killed. The girl that was hung, and then the girl that was scalped. I don't see her living for too long because
blood loss, I guess. And I gotta say, that was just barely the beginning, I bet.
And like I said, they were being transferred there from that location to Salo.
Yeah, Salo. Yeah, the title of the film is Salo, and it's a town that those. Well, first of all, it's the town where those youth came from, but it's also the real town where the transcripts was set. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, so it's it was only the beginning, and that's the horrifying and messed up part is, like they said, you can only be killed once, but you can keep on torturing until they're not breathing. Mm-hmm. And it's just, who knows what they had planned for them beyond that. Yeah. It's just, that's pretty horrifying to think that.
Salo 2, Electric Boogaloo, oh my gosh. But yeah, I think that pretty much concludes our conversation, right?
Yeah.
Should we get into ratings?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so we thought it'd be really fun because, admittedly, this is a really good movie. It's shot very well, it was written very well, it was acted very well, but we don't think we should rate these movies on quality alone because there are really poorly made movies that have the same message, and if it were to be rated solely on the fact of how it was presented, it would be a low rating. Yeah. So instead, we figured we'd have a little bit fun with it, and we'll use a 1 to 10 rating. 1, the lowest rating being, okay, that was a walk in the park. This was the Finding Nemo of fucked up movies, And 10 being, oh my God, I'm psychologically scarred. I won't sleep for a week. I'll have nightmares. I might kill myself. So we're going to go on that rating scale. So on a scale from 1 to 10 in the fucked up film podcast sense, what do you give Salo or 120 Days of Sodom?
Honestly, probably a 7 or an 8.
Like a 7.5.
Okay, we'll go with that. Okay, I don't know.
Okay.
We're doing the point.
You can do 0.5.
So everything was beautifully done. I enjoyed everything. Like the way it was shot, the sound, the way everything was done was very, very creatively, artistically pleasant. But for me, the thing that I wasn't too, I can't say pleased with, but there's a lot of lack of gore, a lot of lack of blood, a lot of lack of all of that. So if that's what you're looking for in this film, this is not going to be for you. It's more psychological, more breaking of the human spirit and body. That's why it probably has a higher rating than it should, because like I said, I did enjoy the environment and the setting. There's very little violence, very little gore, by the standards of what we're going to end up watching in the future. Most of it is psychological. You get to see a lot of things that you would hear about but never see willingly. So if that's something for you, I would recommend watching it. But if you don't like seeing people put under stress or people being hurt or abused, I mean, not that you would, but if it's something that causes your stomach to turn, I would not watch it. Mm-hmm. I definitely do not recommend it if watching people get injured is your breaking point.
Yeah, you wouldn't I'll say that with mine. But mine is. Oh, you done?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm good.
Yeah, no, my rating is a 7. A 7 out of 10 on that scale, specifically because I just cannot believe how affected I was by this movie watching it this time. And I've been giving my other co-host a lot of shit for not wanting to watch these fucked up movies, and yet here I am being queasy with movie number 1 out of 22.
But to be fair, this was also further down the list, so I think
but even then, like, I've seen some shit, literally and figuratively, and for some reason, this one got to me this time.
I think it's because, again, we saw it almost a decade ago, and we felt towards it very nonchalant, like, oh, it's okay.
We're amongst friends, we can laugh at it, but like, it's just you and I, we're like, oh no.
Shit, yeah, no, it's, and I think that's partially why it took more effect now than it did then.
Yeah.
Like, back then, I would have been like, oh, the setting? Oh, I don't know, they were in a field somewhere.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, it's like, very, very aesthetically pleasing.
Oh, and by the way, I found it really awesome that you could understand half of what they were saying.
Well, it's a lot of synonyms between Italian and Spanish,
yeah.
so...
but yeah, no, this one just really got to me this time, and it's funny because, like, as you were saying at the end, because I'll say what I was going to say back then. Like, if the most fucked up thing you've seen was like Hostel, this is not the movie for you. No. Okay, because Hostel treats gore in a fun way, in a fucked up fun way. You know, like. Oh, I want to watch that happen. This one does it in a psychological way, and that depends wholly on your mindset. If you can't handle Hostel, then you can't handle this.
Well, the thing about Hostel is it characterizes and gives a physical vessel to the torment that's going on. Like, it's the guy that puts on the butcher's outfit with the mask. It's like, it kind of downplays it, but these people are straight up.
Yeah,
you would see them every day walking by.
Maybe Hostel is a bad. Maybe Hostel was a bad example. Maybe Saw.
Saw. It's the same thing. It treats the aggression, the violence, and all of that as a character, as an entity. Mm-hmm. That you'd be like, oh, there's no way that could be something real. These people are just they're in suits for most of the movie. They just look like regular, everyday businessmen.
Except for that one guy.
Oh, that one guy. I can't. Oh, his jokes.
Yeah,
I can't.
That was my least favorite character 9 years ago, and he's still my least favorite character today.
I swear I've seen him in another movie that I was not too pleased with.
You've seen him in your nightmares, because he's definitely been in my nightmares.
There's a guy that totally gave off a creeper vibe, like, beyond the suit and beyond everything.
Way more creepier, way more. Legitimately, like, I do not want to see this guy in an alleyway anywhere.
I don't want to see him at Starbucks or at Dutch Bros.
He's going to be in the corner of my room tonight,
But yeah, I mean, overall, like, the movie is more, it's what it does to you psychologically more than what you'd see turning your stomach as far as, like, blood. It
and this one definitely turns your stomach too.
No, definitely.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but for some reason 9 years ago, fecalphilia didn't really affect me. Now it did. So it's
the brownies.
The brownies definitely did not help. It's fudge. It's even worse.
I don't know. Maybe it's because we humorized it more then. Like
No, I'm gonna boil it down to just seeing way more fucked up shit because this movie was seen very early on in the roster a long time ago.
Yeah. And
then having seen even more fucked up shit since then, and also being older and a little bit wiser, dare I say a little bit more mature. So it's a new pair of eyes than it was 9 years ago.
Yeah. Like I said, I enjoyed watching it for, looking out for the message and for things around, little Easter eggs or whatever, if you call them Easter eggs.
Yeah.
Versus let's just watch someone's eye get gouged out and be like, oh, collectively in a room, because that's what we do. Now actually watching down and observing the film for what it's supposed to be, which is a piece of art, it definitely did do what it was supposed to. It invoked feelings. It made you think a certain way. It made you feel certain things versus just the instant you feel one way and then that's it. It actually did what it was meant to.
Yeah. And I just can't believe this movie was just sitting in my collection for that long. Like, whoa, what else is there that I forgot?
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel you there. I have a bunch of movies at home that I'm like, I'm going to go watch this 3 years later. Like, when did I buy this?
There's still movies from like 10 years ago that I haven't even opened. Oh. They're still in the plastic wrap. They're probably worth something, but... But yeah, I guess that concludes our talk about Salo, right?
Yeah, it's like I said, it's if you want to test your boundaries of what you can actually withstand, as far as non-gore, non-blood content, I would suggest it. Mm-hmm. For blood and gore, I would not. There's very minimal in it, so
I would not suggest this movie. Go watch Finding Nemo. Well, shall we close out the episode?
Yes, sir.
Alrighty. Well, you have been listening to the Fucked Up Film Podcast. We're not going to announce what we're going to do next week because we happen to notice that some of these movies are kind of hard to find. So bear with us as we go through our list one way or another. But come back next Friday and we'll be covering something maybe more fucked up than this. Who knows?
We'll find out.
But you can find us on Podbean. You can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can maybe find us on YouTube. We don't know yet. We'll find out. You'll find out. Yeah. But it's very early stages. Look us up, the Fucked Up Film Podcast. Depending on who you have, the word fuck might be censored, so it'll be asterisk CKED. One way or another, look up the Fucked Up Film Podcast.
We'll have alternative spelling somewhere.
Yeah, that's how you'll find us. Until then, my name is Harrison.
My name is Francisco.
Everybody be cool, be safe,
and stay sick.